Russia is not a part of the beast system. Giving all praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem Rakakwadash. And you know me, I'm known for going into a lot of prophetic scriptures. And I've covered subjects dealing with, the beast and the charagma, of course. Some of the major prophetic events. Anyway, back at One West, under the seven, or the so-called seven, they went into a lot of prophecies, especially High Priest Ariah, your High Priest Shishaya also, and some of the other men, but mainly individuals such as High Priest Ariah, High Priest Shishaya, High Priest Kazak went into a lot of prophetic. Well, all of them did, but High Priest Ariah comes up a lot. Anyway, they taught that the breakdown of the beast is, how did they say it? They would say the Romans, the Spanish, the French, the British, the Germans, then they would say Russia, then they would say Great Britain or England, which was clearly wrong. Even today, Bishop Nathaniel, or Nathanielaga as we knew him, he was Nathanielaga because there was two Nathanialas before him. So you had a Nathaniela, then you had a Nathaniela Ba, then you had a Nathaniela Aga, which was him. So there was two. I don't remember the first two, but he was Nathanielaga, which is now, he calls himself, Bishop Nathaniel. And to this day, he teaches that the beast, he mentions Russia, because he's regurgitating what he learned from, the top seven, which I said in previous videos, they went off on certain things. We just had a back and forth with HOI, House of Israel, led by priest Zabak, concerning the grafting in, pursuant to Romans the 11th chapter, in which we said that, they said that's the popular breakdown. It is the popular breakdown, but it's the correct breakdown, because the seven had that wrong as well. And if you put those precepts together, precept upon precept, as the scriptures say, you would come to the conclusion that Cornelius is in fact the Israelite, and the Romans the 11th chapter, the wild branches being grafted in are also Israelites. And it has nothing to do with the northern kingdom, because they'll say, oh, that's the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom, for the most part, pursuant to prophecy, wound up going to the Western Hemisphere, which is North, Central, and South America. That's where all the tribes are. Up in Canada, Gad, all up in Canada. The so-called U.S. You had Gad and Reuben, and some of Issachar, the southwest, that was populated by Issachar. Then as you go down further south, that was Issachar and the rest of the so-called Latin tribes. Those are definitely the descendants of the northern kingdom. It says where never mankind dwelt. Where never mankind dwelt in the Apocrypha, 2nd Ezra's the 13th chapter, starting from the 40th verse on down, it said that they went to a land where never mankind dwelt, and that's a fulfillment of Deuteronomy 29 verse 28. You can read 28 and 29, where it speaks about another land. Anyway, coming back to the subject, I went to NATO on Wikipedia, and if you go to any old dictionary, I don't know, let's say the 70s or so, mid to late 70s, early 80s, they would tell you that NATO was formed as an alliance after World War II against Russia, but also against Germany. So you have a NATO nation, Germany. Well, NATO was put together to form an alliance just in case Germany or the Soviet Union attacked one. That means they attacked all. So Germany was one of the enemies, but Germany became because they got involved in NATO by a treaty or a pact called the East German. East Germany becomes part of the Federal Republic of Germany and the alliance. And in November of 1990, the alliance signed a treaty to conventional armed forces in Europe. So ultimately, they became part of NATO. So you had former enemies that became allies. And now we're in the time of the defeat of it in Daniel, the 12th chapter. Anyway, so let me read a little bit of the history here. It says, history of the NATO. It says, on 4 March 1947, the Treaty of Dunkirk, and I heard that term before. The Treaty of Dunkirk was signed on March 4th, 1947 between France and the United Kingdom and Dunkirk, France, as a treaty of alliance and mutual assistance against a possible attack a possible German attack in the aftermath of World War II. It entered into force on 8 September 1947. So it says the Treaty of Dunkirk was signed by France and the United Kingdom as a treaty alliance, mutual assistance in the event of a possible attack by Germany or the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was never a part of the beast system. Although in Revelation, the 13th chapter, the first couple of verses speaks about the head of it and the feet. I was at the head of a lion and the feet of a bear. The feet of the bear, or had a mouth like a lion, and had the feet of a bear. The feet of a bear represents Esau's military forces, which the feet of the bear represents the end of Esau's society because the feet will destroy the rest of the body. But they never had a union. They were never part of NATO. NATO, as I said in the beginning of this video, was set up as a number of allied nations coming together to fight against, after World War II, to fight against Germany and or the Soviet Union. It says aftermath of World War II, in 1948, this alliance was expanded to include the Benelux countries. Now, Benelux is a combination of, what is it? Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, which is the Benelux. 3 countries coming together as one. So that's how the treaty, so you had a treaty among those 3 countries. It says the Benelux Union is also known as simply, the Benelux Union, also known as simply Benelux, is a political, economic, remember the beast is also the EU, a political, a military, and economic union and formal international intergovernmental cooperation of 3 neighboring states in Western Europe: Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The name is a portmanteau form, to become Benelux. So you got a lot of these brothers, they'll regurgitate, what they learned at under the 7, but they don't go into the history. They, like I said, they regurgitate. They eat something and they spit it back out. So now I'm going into the actual history. So when you read this history, you know that the Soviet Union and Germany never was a part of the beast. Well, what about the first beast, which is Roman Empire? Guess what? There was no such thing as Russia or the Soviet Union. That was no man's land. That's why in Revelation 13, Isaiah the 13th chapter, it refers to the Russians as the Medes. Because if you go to Russia, I don't have a map up, if you go to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, and between that is the Caucasus, south of that is the land of the Medes. And the original Medes were not Edomites. It says, Benelux countries in the form of Western Union, also referred to as the Brussels Treaty Organization. So the Benelux was formerly known as the BTO, Brussels Treaty Organization, established by the Treaty of Brussels. And you notice all these nations, member nations, are all Edomites. There's no Moabites a part of NATO. There's no Hamites a part of NATO. No Arabs. So this is a treaty of Edomites, which also proves that Edomites are still here today. They're in the power seat. Treaty of Brussels talks for a new military alliance, which could also include North America. Now, how the hell did North America become a part of these European? These are all European nations. The Benelux, France, the United Kingdom. These are all European nations on the other side of the world. How in the hell did North America or the USA become a part of it? Because it's a fulfillment of prophecy, and the rulers of North America are Edomites, which North America is Babylon. It speaks about the woman sitting upon the scarlet-colored beast. The woman represents America, not the Roman Catholic institution, not Vatican City, as some false prophets teach. It says resulted in the signature of the North Atlantic Treaty on April 1949. I remember they had a celebration of 50 years of NATO celebrated at the UN, and we were speaking that week when they had the celebration on 34th Street. This is long before YouTube. Long before YouTube. Actually, it was 1999. So this is why you have to, you cannot get the mystery if you don't know the history. You know, you gotta know the history in order to understand the mystery, which is the prophecies. And we here at Great Millstone, we give it to you. So here, and it took 2 years from 1947. This was a couple of years after World War II. They said we got to get some alliances together. And that during that same time, I got to go into that history of the UN, which the UN has nothing to do with NATO or the EU, but they're they work, the UN works alongside with NATO and the EU. That's an extension of NATO and the EU, so you can understand. Not them African nations and Moabite nations, they just members. You know? The real power lies in NATO and the EU. Anyway, it says so it says the North Atlantic Treaty on 4 April 1949 by the member states of the Western Union plus the United States, Canada. Wait a minute, Canada? That's north of the United States. Isn't it supposed to be a European alliance? No, it's an Idumean alliance. Edomite alliance. Portugal, Italy, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. It goes on to say, let me just read this. West Germany joined NATO in 1955, which led to the formation of the rival Warsaw Pact during Cold War. Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Treaty, or the Warsaw Pact, WTO, officially the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance, commonly known as the Warsaw Pact, was a collective defense treaty signed in Warsaw, Poland, between the Soviet Union and the 7 other Western Bloc systems. So they had pacts even with Russia, but Russia broke off. So Russia never became a solid member of NATO. Remember, NATO was put together to protect ultimately from Germany and Soviet Union. Then it became the Soviet Union. We're coming together against the Soviet Union. 1945, So Soviet Union was never official member of NATO. Even if you bring it up to date, the current members of the NATO nations does not include the Soviet Union. Anyway, let me read on. The North Atlantic Treaty was largely dormant until the Korean War, which was 1951-52, initiated the establishment of NATO to implement it by means of integrated military structure. That's why it's known as the Beast. That's why it's known as the Beast. And all these beast nations, these NATO nations, and the EU nations, they're all pushing the same current thing that's going on right now. This included the formation of Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, which is known as SHAPE, the acronym SHAPE. In 1951, which adopted the Western Union's military structure and plans, included Stagnik in NATO. A standard agreement defines processes, procedures, terms, and conditions for common military or technical procedures of equipment between the member countries, which is NATO. We're talking about the military side, not the economic side of the alliance. Each NATO state ratifies a Stagnig and implements it within their own military. In 1952, the post of Secretary General of NATO was established as the organization chief of civilian. The year also saw the first major NATO maritime exercise. So it was a joint military exercise, war games. That's why it's called the Beast. That's why the first beast is the Roman Empire. The power of the teeth of the first beast is iron, their military. See, all nations use iron to make their swords and their weapons, but the Romans use iron far more than the other nations. You know, that's why it says in Daniel 7, and I believe Daniel 2, it says great iron teeth. And the teeth are the weaponry of a military. So their swords, their armor, you know, their helmets and so forth were made of iron. They use a lot of iron. It says in the accession of Greece and Turkey to the organization, following the London and Paris conferences, West Germany was permitted to rearm military as the Germany joined NATO in May of 1955, which was in turn a major factor in the creation of the Soviet-dominated Warsaw Pact, which is a different. You know, you have Russia doing deals with other NATO nations, but they were never officially members of NATO. They had little treaties here and there. Let me do this. Let me see what this says. Bear with me for a minute. Let's see where this takes me. I'm looking for an actual list. It says member states of NATO. NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is an international alliance of that consists of 30 member states from North America and Europe. Okay, I think I found it. Boom. Okay, if you put NATO member countries or states, you'll get Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Montenegro, Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, no Russia, Spain, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, no Russia. Where's the Russia at? Although they had pacts and certain economic treaties with Russia, even to this day, they were never part of the NATO forces. So I'm going to leave you with one precept, which we went over this Saturday. Revelation 1 verse 13. And the term reparation. Repetition is the mother of skill. I believe that's the term. Anyway, I'm gonna leave you with like I said, we went through this this past Saturday out on the highways and the byways. And there was a couple of brothers out there, and they really couldn't get it. You know, that's why you got to go through it over and over again. Anyway, it says Revelation 13 verse 1, and I'll close. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So the leopard represents Alexander. And later in history, the Greeks, not under Alexander, Alexander was never part of NATO. NATO didn't come about and was never part of the Roman Empire, because Alexander was on the scene long before the Roman Empire established. So this is just talking about the Edomite system. I said the mouth. I was wrong. It says that, and the beast which I saw like unto a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear. That's Russia, because Russia's going to be the one that's going to bring this system down. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, which represents Great Britain, which out of Great Britain came the United States. And the dragon, which is the Roman authority, the Roman system, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And that's also the image. The image is the ancient Roman system. That's why you have a Senate, and you have a Caesar. They don't call the president a Caesar, but he sits at the seat of a Caesar. He's also known as commander or commander-in-chief. Now, the Latin word for commander is emperor. So one of the names that a president uses, and one of the titles is commander, commander-in-chief, which means emperor. And I saw one of the heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. His head being wounded to death represents the Roman Empire falling and coming back into power. And today you have America, NATO, and the EU. Now I'm going to show you real quick that the image is not a picture of Caesar Borgia. Bear with me for a minute. Okay, I believe this is it. Revelation 13, verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, technology. Their miracles is technology, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. So how in the hell is the image of the beast a picture of Caesar Borgia? The picture of Caesar Borgia would be an image, right? In the form of a painting. It says, but that it says the image of the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Caesar Borgia never got wounded in the head, died, and came back to life. Like Weekend at Bernie's. It was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire fell, and then the Roman Empire came back into power. Which the head nation will be the woman, the whore that sits upon many waters, which is Babylon, America. Anyway.